Sustainable economic growth is something that every business owner, entrepreneur, or organizational leader aspires to as it relates to a prosperous forecast of prosperity. However, the economic headwinds of certainty as it relates to economic growth is something that more and more organizational leaders admit that they're struggling with. And I've got some national data to further certify such an assertion, according to my friends over at Stripe. When it comes to profitability, the timeline for most startups is between 2 to 3 years before they turn an actual and sustainable profit. And meanwhile, Stripe also asserts that more than 25% of founders spend more than half of their week fundraising the capital necessary to keep their operation afloat, which directly affects their ability to focus primarily on sustainable revenue generation. For my friend Mark Gordon, he's known by founders as the Rebel Chief Revenue Officer. He's helped to scale businesses from $1 million to $30 million in revenue, rebuilt go-to-market engines across SaaS services and tech. He also built a business around the concept that most businesses don't have a sales problem, they have a clarity and alignment problem. He's the founder of Integrated Go-to-Market Solutions, where he helps B2B founders transform from sales hopeful to sales led by aligning their messaging, their lead gen, their sales process, and tech into a process that actually closes. If you've ever felt as a leader or a team that your team can't explain what you do, the bottom line is that your outbound sales process is getting ignored. And even if you still believe that you're the best salesperson within the walls of your organization, this is a conversation with Gordon you can't afford to miss. So without further ado, my conversation with this aforementioned transformational business sales leader starts right now. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Mark, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to learn about your journey in business and entrepreneurship. Great to see you, and happy Thursday to you, my friend.
Thursday, man. I'm excited to be a part of your program.
Absolutely. So, Mark, I know that you are someone who believes that, founders and CEOs have to better prioritize sort of what their goals and priorities are. Because I know that you're someone who believes that if you try to prioritize everything, it's really a failure to lead, my friend. And I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by diving into why you believe that, my friend.
So I think that's a great question. Someone's been checking out my social media, so I appreciate that. What I'll share is if you are a founder, there is this uh, the idea that everything is important, you need to prioritize everything, can feel really good. It can keep you busy, and actually can help you get started in business. But it becomes the bottleneck, especially when you start leading other people and setting their priorities. Because if to your team everything seems like a priority, nothing seems like a priority, and that's a lack of clarity. It allows people to treat things that are urgent as the thing that's most important. And the truth is, when you're running a business, usually the thing that's most important is not the thing that's urgent. I'll give you an example. Sales and marketing is almost never the most urgent thing in your business. If you don't do any marketing today or you don't do any sales today, there is no risk of your business, of you losing your business. But there's a bunch of other things that are urgent, right? That need to get done right now, that can be done right now, that then they feel important. And so if you accept everything as a priority, your team will always prioritize what they can do most urgently because they feel like they're moving the ball down the court, but they're not usually focused on what's most important. And so by really prioritizing what is most important and setting your goals and tracking around that, you allow the organization to have a combined focus and you get better results.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Mark, I know that you've scaled businesses from over $1 million in revenue to over $30 million in revenue, and you've also built a go-to-market framework for across or SaaS service businesses, and I know that you've also built business concepts around the principle of most organizations don't have a sales problem. They have a clarity problem, my friend, a clarity and alignment problem. So I'm wondering if you can tell me what goes into scaling businesses at mass, and how we provide more businesses with better clarity and alignment, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so this is something I saw really as soon as I started working with software companies and technology companies, which is if you ask the people inside the organization what the company's primary objective is, what they do and who they do it for, you ask eight people, you get eight different answers. And most of those answers are sort of like, well, blah, 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 blah. And it takes them 4 or 5 minutes to get that across. And oftentimes, what they describe is actually something that maybe internally makes sense or in their very specific niche makes sense, but probably doesn't make sense to a broader audience. And what we found is that the organizations that were scaling most quickly and seeing the biggest success, that wasn't happening. You could ask eight people in eight different departments and you'd get mostly the same answer. It would take people a couple of sentences to explain it to you. And if they said it to your mom or somebody else who wasn't tech savvy, they'd be able to understand it as well. And what happens is that when you have a leadership team, particularly a founder or a CEO, who is very clear about what the mission is, who your core customer is, and what it is that you're supposed to be doing for that person, it allows the rest of the organization, the people in it, to work more independently, where they can make critical decisions because they understand what their North Star is. And they're not just worried about working through the bureaucracy in your organization. They're worried about delivering the absolute best results to your client. And so there's much less friction when everybody knows what direction you're going in. People can move faster. And more importantly, you can really zero in on that core customer, making sure you're delivering a product that gets them to where they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I'm also curious to ask you about, when we're talking about prioritizing tasks in businesses, oftentimes that's a subjective sort of objective. So I'm curious for you, what sort of questions should business owners or organizational leaders ask themselves when it comes to prioritizing what's important in the business in the here and now, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, it really depends on what stage of business you're at, but I'll just share it this way is that most problems in a business can be solved by having greater demand than supply, meaning that if you have and also by being able to charge enough for you to be profitable. So two kind of core questions I would ask is, are you able to charge enough for your product or services that you can cover cost and run at a profit? Because when you have profit, you can solve a lot of problems by bringing in the right people or the right systems. And when you don't have profit, it's very difficult to solve problems because you don't have the money to go out and build the team or the processes around that. And then the second piece of it is, how can you create more demand? And so if you have leaders who are very focused on creating demand, getting the messaging in front of the right people at the right time and attracting customers, and you're able to solve those customers' problems at a price point that allows you to drive profit, there's usually very little problems in your business. And so the two number one priorities are, do I have a cost and pricing structure that allows me to be profitable? And do I have a system that builds enough demand for my organization and my product that I'm able to work with the customers that are going to be most profitable for my organization are our target customers. And so all of the problems in an organization usually stem from one of those two issues. For instance, if you don't have enough demand for your core customer, you end up taking your non-core customer. Those non-core customers want things from your customer success team that your core customers wouldn't. You start building things and processes for people that are not your core customer, and suddenly you're spending all this time and money solving a problem that isn't even one that you initially intended to solve. So having that alignment around what you're doing and who you're doing it for and creating that demand and then making sure you're doing it at a profit, those are always the two most important things that founders should be focused on, even though they're rarely the most urgent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know as the founder of Integrated Go-to-Market Solutions, my friend, that you assist B2B founders with that very transition, my friend, being led from being a sales hopeful to leading their sales process based on their messaging alignment and sort of their sales process, my friend. So I wonder if we can spend some time talking about that particular business and how we go from being a sales hopeful to being led by sort of our lead generation and better messaging, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
So I'll give you an example that I think kind of articulates it is that, we see a lot of AI companies right now sprouting up, and usually those companies are being led by a founder with great technical expertise. And that founder will build what they consider to be a minimum viable product. And they go to sell it. And if one or two people or 10 people don't buy that product, that founder's goal is to then go back and try to make the product better and continue to iterate on that. And the problem with that is that founder now treats that product like it's their baby, is very concerned that no one is going to like it or that everybody needs to have all the different things. And they're not building a sales-led motion. So what does that mean? It means if your organization is sales-led, that is your sales team and your marketing team coming and saying, this is what our customers want, this is what they will buy, and this is what we need to build. Whereas oftentimes I see organizations that are engineer-led and they are building a product that feels good to them or that makes sure that they think everyone is going to like it versus just their core customer. And so when an organization is sales-led, it means having extreme clarity on who the target is and what problem you solve and making sure that you're not wavering outside of that because those wasted resources slow your entire organization down.
And Mark, can I ask you, because I'm curious to get your opinion on, as a sales leader, what's the key to not being complacent in terms of the systems that you put in place and provided with sort of the engine or the business juice, for the lack of a better term, to stay committed to the process while also staying engaged, my friend. So I guess what I'm asking is, from your perspective, what's the key to becoming to staying engaged without out being complacent in business, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
I think if you become a sales leader or a CEO, I think there's probably some really natural things about you as a person that prevent you from becoming complacent. And so, but if you find yourself complacent, what you're really saying is you no longer care about the mission. You no longer feel good about how the work you do in at your work is serving you, your life, and the person that you want to become, and or you feel like your agency has been taken away in the workplace in a way where you no longer feel like your efforts are either being rewarded or can make a difference. And so I'll just say is that I complacency is something I have a hard time relating to, because when I'm feeling complacent, what that really means for me is I'm now disengaged. It's something I no longer want to do, and I tend to not do things I don't want to do. If I'm not interested in what we're trying to do and the goal we're trying to get to, I'll just check out. And that means go finding a place where I feel like I am going to have value and be able to both accomplish things for the team that I'm joining, and how that accomplishment serves me in my life and what my personal goals are. And so, what I ask you is, if you're feeling complacent, it's, have you been disempowered in some way where you feel like you no longer have agency to make a difference, or do you no longer just enjoy what you're doing, or you're no longer willing to do what it takes to get to where you want to go? But if you have big goals, and you feel like you have a chance to achieve them in the spot that you are, I think most winners are never going to become complacent in that environment. And so complacency is for people who already feel like they've won something or feel like they can no longer win at all. And so I've never felt that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I know that you help the clients that you work with build world-class revenue engines for B2B companies within 120 days, my friend. And I'm wondering, how do you do that efficiently and effectively without losing sort of business integrity or the principles of a business, my friend? So I'm wondering your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, so the first step in our core four process is to come in and interview the leadership team and some of the core customers to identify what actually does make this company special. What do people like about the experience of working with them? What do they not like about the experience of working with them or their product? So that we can accurately capture, in a way that moves the needle, what this company does and who they do it for. And again, I know we keep coming back to that point, but it is kind of where everything starts. And so when we authentically capture what makes the people and the product and the services of a company different, and we're able to articulate that in a way where a normal ninth grader can understand it, and then we're able to get that message in front of the right people at the right time, those principles apply to every single business. And so, as long as you know, if you have a quality product or service and you know it solves a problem for a group of people who can afford to buy it, we can always find a way to talk about that in a way that moves the needle and causes an emotional reaction. And we can always find a way to get that messaging in front of the right people at the right time. And so that formula exists across the board. The problems that we can't fix are if your service or product isn't very good, and or um, you can only sell it at a point where the problem it solves isn't worth the money you need to charge. Those are problems that we really don't solve for people, right? That's a systemic and very real. But most of the time, really just what it is that you haven't found a way to talk about your product in a way that resonates with people, and you haven't found a way to get that message in front of the right people at the right time. And those are the things that we can do for any organization. And so whether you sell tractors to farmers, or you sell software, or you sell consulting services, there's usually a narrow band of a few thousand or 100,000 people that we need to get that message in front of. And there's only so much messaging that we can do authentically that's going to move the needle with those people, but we find the best way to do those things, and that's what moves the needle.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because LinkedIn released a study last year that saw that nearly half of American business owners and organizational leaders, from a marketing perspective, admit that their messaging doesn't fully address all of their audience needs, and 37% acknowledge that their messaging is too inconsistent across their organization, which creates confusion among their buyers. So I'm curious to ask you how you interpret those findings, my friend, and how we can help people really make sure that their messaging is clear and concise. What are your thoughts on those findings and anything else you want to share about consistent and clear messaging, my friend? What are your thoughts?
My number one takeaway when reading that originally, and as you bring it back up, was the word confusion. I disagree with that word. I don't think it causes confusion among your buyers to have misaligned messaging. I think it causes distrust, which I think is a far more powerful word, and I think more likely to get your team's attention and is actually what's happening. Which is if your buyer sees messaging in one place that says one thing and that's your priority, all your messaging might be true, but if it's not consistent, and I see messaging here that says one thing, and then in your lead generation funnel, I get exposed to messaging that says it in a different way. And then I get your sales team on the call and they say it in a different way. Whether that person consciously knows it or just subconsciously knows it, what we've taught them is that you don't know who you are. And if you don't know who you are and what you do, how can you expect me to trust that you're going to be able to deliver results for me or that this product is going to be a good decision for me? And so, human intuition, something that I think most executives don't give buyers enough credit for. We have tons of intuition as buyers. We make tons of quiet decisions or subconscious decisions about what we like and don't like and who we like and don't like and what we buy and don't buy every single day. And so aligned messaging brings calmness to the buyer process. It takes stress out of the process and it teaches them to trust you because in all the different ways you're saying the same thing to them, the signal to them, we know who we are and we're very confident we're for you. And by the way, if you come to my website, you're going to see that we're for you. And when you get our flyer, you're going to see we're for you. And you talk to my sales guy, you're going to see that we understand you and your problems and how to solve them. And any signals that are not consistent with that doesn't just cause confusion, it causes distrust. And so I think that's the real opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think is the key to maximizing lead generation and consistent messaging? I'll use myself as an example. So outside of hosting this podcast, I speak to organizations about the importance of hiring folks with disabilities, and I'm always looking for new ways to maximize lead generation and crafting effective messaging, my friend. So what do you think is the key to maximizing lead generation and also crafting effective messaging, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
So I have two major thoughts. One is you have to understand the economics of what we call your customer acquisition cost, right? So if you're selling a product and you have a certain lifetime customer value, you need to know upfront how much money you can spend on marketing and sales in totality. That includes all your technology and everything else. You need to know what your budget is to get a new customer in the door and how much money you can spend. Based on that, and you also need to know how many customers that you need in order to hit your goal. And then once you know that, you can kind of figure out what is the best lead generation strategy. So if I am in a business where I need to sell one or two customers a month, and those are high value customers, high lifetime value, I might spend a lot of time and energy on my LinkedIn outreach strategy or my LinkedIn ads. If I know that I need a volume play where at some point I'm going to need to sell 1,000 customers a month, then I might be looking at Google or Meta ads as a better way to go about it. And so understanding what customer acquisition costs you need and what type of scale you need to move forward is kind of the first step to lead generation. And then once you have an idea of what your goals are, which is, okay, how can I be efficient? Meaning, how can I make sure that the combined effort of marketing and sales is bringing that customer acquisition cost in where I need it to be? So for one organization, it might be, hey, I pay my sales guy $100,000 a year. I need a $25,000 customer acquisition cost. I'm going to do no marketing, and that salesperson needs to go out and knock on doors to bring in 4 clients a year. I may have another strategy, which is, hey, I want to be able to do this with no salesperson, where people can come to my website and buy. And I can still have a $25,000 customer acquisition cost. So now I have to run ads to get enough people to visit my website where there's going to be 4 people this year who will sign up without ever talking to a salesperson. And most organizations have some combination of that, which is we can spend $12,000 on marketing, $12,000 on our sales team, and I'm coming in at my $25,000 customer acquisition cost for my 4 clients on a $100,000 budget. But understanding upfront what your cost basis can be for you to run a profitable organization then dictates your lead generation strategy. And then I think paying attention to that upfront really, really narrows where your focus can be. And then once you know which channels you have to hit, it's just a combination of volume, right? How can I get the most amount of volume at the lowest possible cost? Meaning, how can I get my messaging in front of the right people and more of those people at the lowest possible cost? And that's kind of where we start our process with our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the findings from the Content Marketing Institute that did a study last year that said that more than 90% of B2B business owners and founders use content marketing to better, promote their businesses, but only 40% of those businesses really track what systems and marketing strategies are effective, and only 29% of those business leaders really use that data to their advantage. So I'm curious about your thoughts on those findings and how we can make sure that content marketing maximizes for us when it comes to a return on the investment. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So this might be controversial in some way, but I think that one of the lowest returns on investment and least predictable returns on investment is content-based marketing. And I know that there are people out there that have made millions, if not billions of dollars with their content-based marketing. But I believe that those people are few and far between. And this idea that anybody, given the right strategy, can efficiently generate leads from their content-based marketing, I just have not seen that for most people. Some people really enjoy filming that content, doing the editing, putting stuff out there, coming up with the ideas. They have a creativity for it. They're great at it. The world sees their face or hears their voice and falls in love. For most of us, there are much more efficient strategies to generate business. I think the reason why so many people spend all this time and energy on content marketing is because it's so easy in theory to get started. Meaning all you need is your phone. You just start putting stuff out there and you're doing something, and it's free essentially to start doing it. So everyone starts in this area, but for most people, it doesn't lead anywhere. For our company specifically, our content-based marketing strategy is that we want to have a bunch of content like this that people can go there. And I'm going to put it on my website and put it on YouTube for credibility, meaning that once I've already targeted you as a potential customer, reached out to you and had a conversation, I want you to be able to do a search of me and go, oh, there's this content. I see him here. It's consistent. We see it everywhere. That's great. But do I believe that I'm going to put this podcast out today and 7 people are going to call me based on hearing it? I'm going to get a bunch of leads. It's never happened yet. And I do a lot of podcasts. And so, when you're theoretically investing in that content strategy, maybe you're one of the lucky ones that has that work out for you. And if you do, it scales, it's wonderful. And for the people it works for, it's great. But if you're starting a business today and your strategy, your main marketing strategy is to do content to drive leads, I think you have a very high percentage of failure for people who do it that way.
So outside of doing content marketing, what's the solution to get more people invested in the business that you're trying to promote, my friend? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think having a really targeted ideal customer profile, meaning knowing, hey, I don't just sell, we do consulting services for sales and marketing. Do we do them for everybody? No. Our core customers are the founders or CEOs of presidents of business to business companies selling high ticket products who are already doing at least $3 million a year in revenue and doing less than $50 million a year in revenue. Now that's still a pretty wide range of companies. You're talking about tens of thousands of people who can fall into that category, companies, right? But it very specifically narrows us so that when I find somebody in that group, I find a CEO of a SaaS company doing $10 million a year. That person hears my content, visits my website, checks my Facebook profile, and they see I specialize in helping people just like them go from 10 million to 20 million to 50 million, right? That messaging is the same. And because of that specialization, I can pull data, and I can pull data for all the SaaS companies that are doing between 10 and 15 million a year in revenue right now. And I can message those founders on LinkedIn. I can send those founders an email. I can knock on those founders' doors once I get really limited with who my target audience is. But I need to try 7 times, 7 different ways to get a message in front of that person directly, knowing it's for them, not relying on the algorithm to do it for me. And comes that person with a compelling message that's going to make them say, hey, I want to talk to that person. That person has an idea or a product that if I'm not going to buy it, I at least need to know about it. At least this was going to be worth a conversation with Mark. And if I can generate conversations and I can sell, then we're going to be able to convert those contacts into revenue. But I think doing it strictly from content, I think it's very hard to do in most industries, and it's very hard to do for most creators.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I'm curious to ask you about, optimizing LinkedIn because a lot of B2B founders and a lot of business and organizational leaders spend time on LinkedIn to try and promote their business. And LinkedIn has gone through a significant makeover over the years. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the effectiveness of the platform and how we can better optimize businesses' presence on LinkedIn. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think if you're selling a business to business product, especially to executives or founders or CEOs, there's absolutely no better platform in the world than using LinkedIn and LinkedIn Sales Navigator to reach out to those people with your direct messaging. And it doesn't mean that one out of every 10 people you message is going to meet with you. Maybe it's only one out of 100, maybe it's one out of 50. But that's enough if you have a consistent approach and you know exactly who you're targeting. Because when someone responds to that direct message or that connection request, it's because they have an immediate need, right? That's what we call a high intent lead, right? If as a founder on LinkedIn, I probably get 5 people a day reaching out to sell me something. Most of them I ignore. Occasionally, someone comes with a message that solves a problem or is of interest to me specifically. When I reply to those messages, there's a very high likelihood that if this person is who they say they are and on a sales call can convince me they do solve my problem, I'm going to buy, right? Whereas I'll tell you this, when I run meta ads and someone late at night sees my ad and they apply, it's 11 o'clock at night and they're a little bit tired, that's usually a lower intent ad, right? It gets them for a lower intent customer or lead, right? They applied because they were interested. Maybe I was talking really quickly. Maybe they got excited by my vibe. And so I make the filter through a lot more leads to find the client. Whereas when I'm on LinkedIn and I'm reaching out to presidents or CEOs or founders or companies, those people are not willy nilly responding. And if I can get them to commit to a meeting and show up, there's a really good chance that they're going to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I'm curious to get your opinion on the guidance that you offer to businesses and organizational leaders who feel that their teams are struggling to articulate both their company's values, experience, and their engagement and declining sort of outbound efforts, or find themselves sort of remaining as the top salesperson at their company, but they're struggling to connect, my friend. So, what piece of advice would you give to those organizations in that spot to really see a higher return on investment, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
This is really important. The first thing all those founders should do is call me. I'm just kidding. Um, the first thing that those founders need to do is lead, right? And I know that that sounds trite or overly simplified. But again, when you are feeling those things inside your organization, that is a failure to lead. It is a failure to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. It's a failure to create an environment where motivated people can thrive. It's a failure to create incentive structures that allow people to be creative and motivated and understanding where they're going and what the mission of the company is. And when I come in and work with those, I will not take on a gig unless the founder or the person in charge of the company commits to 45 minutes a week with me throughout the entirety of our engagement. And a lot of times I'll lose a client over that because the founder's like, hey, I don't have time for this. I'm like, cool, well, you don't have time for me, then you don't have time to lead. And I can't fix the problems in your organization because those problems start and end with you and your ability to move the needle forward. And so founders sometimes don't want to hear that. They think I have the wrong person. I have a founder recently I talked to, and he was like, every person I hire to do sales sucks. I go, well, that's almost definitely not true. But if it is, it's your fault for hiring people who suck. And more importantly, they probably don't suck. You're probably putting them in an institutional situation where the average or even a good salesperson is not going to get the job done because they don't have the infrastructure, the support, the messaging, the lead generation, the clarity of product, any of those things in place that allows someone to succeed. And I'll give you another example that I see all the time. You see a small company will go to a bigger company and hire their number two or number three to come in and be their head of sales. It's a huge mistake. Those people who thrive inside large company bureaucracy, where there's a very clearly defined role and the walls are very clear about what you can and can't do, those people are almost never going to come into a small company and have similar success. There are people who build and people who create the rules and people who create the systems. And then there are people who thrive in those systems. And they are almost always two different kinds of people. And so when you're looking for someone to build in your company, either go outside and bring in a consultant to build those things in place, and then you can plug someone into your system, build it yourself as the founder, or certainly find somebody who has a track record of being a builder.
Yeah, and Mark, I want to give you a chance to explain your core four for just a second, my friend, because I know that you help companies go from what you call vanilla to victory, my friend, by using your core four system. To tell me about going from vanilla to victory, my friend, and what goes into that, my friend.
But I'll just share it this way. Our core four is really the backbone of everything we do with our clients. It's nailing your messaging. Messaging is the first thing in the core four, making sure we know what you do, who you do it for. It's super clear. I can see it on your website in 3 seconds, what you're for, what you're not for. It's all there. Your lead generation strategy, which is how do we distribute your messaging to get people interested in meeting with your organization. Your sales process and systems so that once someone is interested, how do you usher them through your sales decision-making process so they become a revenue generating client? And then the technology that works in alignment with those first three. So when we come in with the first thing we do is we work on your messaging. Second thing is we nail down your lead generation strategy. Third thing is we build and refine your sales process. And the fourth thing we do is make sure that your technology from your CRM to your AI to all of your efficiency tools are all aligned and working the way they're supposed to so that every person is going through a streamlined process that's predictable, that's going to lead to more revenue. And so, a lot of consultants or people out there are selling a solution to one of those four things. And a lot of companies are even selling just a partial solution to one of those four things. What we do is bring in a comprehensive approach where we make sure that we have complete alignment, and we will bring in the tools and the teams around that to support it. But we want to create alignment among those core four. And when we do that, friction in the organization disappears and the sky becomes the limit.
Absolutely. And quick remark, tell me if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, I'm all over LinkedIn, Mark D. Gordon. My company website is igtms.com. Integrated go-to-market solutions, igtms.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Mark D. Gordon.
Fabulous, Mark. Well, I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me to talk about business leadership and everything in between, my friend. Your time on my behalf and your work in the space is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me on, Kevin. I really appreciate it.